Happy Maxton Hall Premiere Day! Now I can get into specifics.
Und manchmal reicht eine Sekunde, sie in einen Albtraum zu verwandeln.
Stupid. Ignorant like a child.
Hi, I'm Lady Genevieve, and on my channel I talk about entertainment media. The first 3 episodes of Maxton Hall Season 2 are premiering today, which means I'm free to finally talk about spoilers. Now, on to Episode 1. This is when we get the full story of the most infamous part of the Season 2 trailer, which is the James-Elaine pool incident.
Ugh.
On the one hand, it's not fun to watch if you are emotionally invested in James and Ruby's love story, but on the other hand, wouldn't you have terrible emotional coping mechanisms if you were raised by Mortimer Beaufort? We hate him. He's the worst. I'm going to talk you through some of my initial thoughts and reactions to various plot developments. When Ruby left the party and caught a ride home from some random woman, part of me wondered at the time if that was going to be Alice Campbell, because they had already done so much work to hype up Alice Campbell as being a really big deal, just in general, but also for Ruby's storyline specifically. But no, that was just some nice lady. Then when Ruby's at home and she's absolutely had it up to here with James Beaufort's antics, so she rips up his drawing of her, I thought to myself, oh no, see, this is really serious. This will not be a countdown from 3 and they'll be back together sort of situation. This is a story where the dramatic stakes actually feel real. It's not a series that's overly prone to hyperbole, apart from the wealthy characters being wealthy, but in regards to the relationships, it feels a lot more organic and naturalistic in its delivery. But also, when Ruby ripped up the drawing, I more or less assumed, well, okay, we'll know that they're really fully back together and that things are good once he draws her something new to put back up on her wall. This is how my mind was working on a first-time watch of this season. James waking up the morning after and seeing the salacious pictures with Elaine from the pool party, and he's mortified at remembering what he did and the look on Ruby's face that he caused. Well, 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 if it isn't the consequences of your own actions. And this is one of multiple examples we will have to go through across this season of Elaine being embarrassing. You wait till he's absolutely off his face to make a move. You're predatory and weird and desperate. Don't beg for a man's attention. The brief reunion where Ruby comes over, she's comforting him because she's a good person with a kind heart.
Does having a kind heart make you a good nurse?
But then she needs to leave, and he immediately lashes out. This is why she's correct to leave. Go to therapy, James. And we're not there yet, but how refreshing that that's what actually happens on the show in episode 3, to be more specific. We need to remember that Ruby Bell is a teenage girl. She's someone he cares for, and she cares for him in return, but she's not qualified to handle 17 or 18 years of trauma flaring up in the aftermath of the death of his mother. And then we jump ahead to the funeral, and more importantly, the arrival of James and Lydia's aunt, Ophelia. Ooh, the unexpected, unfortunate timing of bringing Ophelia up now. I will not talk about that other mess, though. I could not think of anything I would like to talk about less than that. Aunt Ophelia is someone that I really thought was going to be a lot more active in this season because she makes such a dramatic impression in this season 2 premiere. Mortimer hates her. And she's an adult who is seemingly not as easy to bring down with a mere flick of his wrist, the way that he gets about anyone and everyone else that even mildly irritates him. Now, I won't say too much about 4, 5, and 6 because we're not there yet, but as you will have seen from these first 3 episodes, she's hardly around. And if I'm being frank, I was kind of irked that she wasn't around more. Logically, I know it makes sense that the story is first and foremost focused on Ruby and James, but if you're going to insist on having Mortimer around and being as much of a supervillain as he is, well, excuse me for being giddy at the thought of an adult being willing to step in and go toe-to-toe with him. I'm sure Mortimer has wronged loads of people. Just get a group together, board a train, and handle your business. Have you learned nothing from Agatha Christie?
Homicide.
Episode 2. James has to recover from the car crash he was in at the end of episode 1. And when they go to the hospital and they gave James's phone to his father, immediately every alarm bell was blaring in my mind. Now for context, I am very alarmed by the escalating violence of the big tech industry, from the surveillance states. Europeans are trying to roll out biometric IDs, and they're not fighting hard enough against that. Ring cameras give access to the cops to spy on civilians. The incessant AI push has completely tanked search engines, and those servers for AI are wreaking horrific damage on the environment. Just obscene water consumption. Absolutely not. Get it away from me. This is all the more reason why I've been shifting an increasing amount of focus onto reading more books from the library and just going off to the cinema, as I already like to do, to be fair. All of this to say, I'm very primed to be worried about nefarious rich people violating your privacy, so as soon as Mortimer grabbed that phone, I was horrified. Hey, you there, watching this video, delete some apps from your phone. I won't tell you which ones, you can decide for yourself, but you probably have some on there that you don't need, and maybe you consider lowering the amount of data harvesting being done on you. And then when James gets home and he's been gifted a new phone from his father, red flag, throw that away, or at least get a second phone to use for the things you don't want him to look at, because what are you doing? Name one time in your life that your father has been trustworthy. That's odd, the room has just gone completely silent. And speaking of silent, Cyril has a storyline of sorts. His grades aren't good enough for Oxford, but if he could just win the big game, maybe he could get a sports scholarship. Really? We're giving airtime to Cyril? Are we supposed to care about Cyril? Clap if you care.
No.
I didn't forget who threw Ruby in the pool. It was Cyril. She had a panic attack in the water. She could have died. But Lady Genevieve, it's not real. It's a fictional series. Yes, I'm aware, but if you are asking me to get invested in the story and invested in these characters, I know who my number one is, and her name is Ruby Bell. And speaking of Ruby, without a doubt, my favorite part of episode 2 is the sleepover. Who cares about being stuck in an on-again, off-again relationship with your emotionally damaged boyfriend when you could have a girls' night? If you've watched my other coverage of Maxton Hall in the videos I published before this one, you know that I was wanting Ruby and Lydia to be friends in the first season, and now it's finally happening. When Ruby came to the Beaufort house and Lydia gave her a hug, when Lydia shows up for the sleepover because Ruby is having a hard time, yes, absolutely. No boys allowed. Unless you find a boy cat on the streets who needs to be rescued, you can bring him. I'm thinking about cats a lot right now because I just adopted a second cat. She's a girl, though. They're both girls, because I am maintaining my bubble of feminine energy. And the fact that Lydia asks Ruby for help when she needs to go get checked up because of her pregnancy, when she's all alone, not a woman in sight to help her, I mean, she probably could have asked her aunt, but that character just returned, so I understand the hesitation there. You know what I need? Less Cyril and more of Ruby and Lydia being the best of friends. Time and time again, the show is so matter-of-fact about emphasizing that Ruby Bell is that girl. That's why everyone wants to be around her. She's magnetic. Well, except Mortimer, of course, but who asked for his opinion? Certainly not I. The scene where James goes and tries to win Ruby back, but she draws a boundary. She stands up for herself. Ooh, I was so proud of her. I don't even know her. She's a fictional character, but I'm proud of her. And this was really a key moment for me of understanding how fully locked in this show's writers are, because, as I talked about in one of my other Maxton Hall videos, that scene in the car after the pool incident where James says that he doesn't know what he's doing, this exchange, in a way, is the flip side of that other scene. James can adore Ruby, but he's still a teenage boy who is not qualified to help Ruby with this intense childhood trauma she has about her father's accident. And Ruby is not qualified to help James with the years of damage his father has done to him. Without all of that, James would still be distraught at losing his mother, but he would have a better support system and coping mechanisms in place. Normally, when you have these made-for-teen or made-for-young adult shows with main characters that are either teenagers or young adults falling in love, and there's lots of drama, I find a fair bit of the dramatic conversations with raised voices to be unbearable to watch. The acting is often a mess. It's just grating to listen to. But Damian and Harriet, they act like they're making cinema, which is a compliment coming from me, a person who would choose going to the cinema over watching a streaming series at minimum 95% of the time. I can't save you, James. Only you can. Oh, she took the words right out of my mouth. Finally, I will officially state that the thing that made me laugh was James in the car and the radio kept playing love songs. Just the look on their faces. I laughed. They caught me off guard. This show is not funny, and I would probably enjoy it a lot more if it was. We're in a serious comedy drought right now. The artists are struggling. The industry is in shambles. It's hard to crack jokes. This was what I needed to see, though. A balm to soothe the sting of the tidal wave of drama that this show continually delivers. Moving on to episode 3, we get some awkward tension in the photo booth. Make sure you stare. Make sure you linger.
Anticipation.
But finally, James does it. He goes to therapy. Between this and the conversation he has with Mr. "Oh, I'll come to the gala. Just kidding. I'm scared of public speaking. Let me bail on you teenagers at the last minute." This conversation was the type of model behavior boys and young men, hell, all men of all ages need to learn from. Talk about your feelings. Be emotionally vulnerable. And with a show like Maxton Hall, it's girls and women that are watching. I checked my analytics for my first Maxton Hall video. You know what the analytics said? Ding, ding, ding. It's a girls' club. Did I or did I not say that episode 3 is James's episode? He's going to therapy. He's having a healthy conversation with a man that teaches him important lessons about his life and how he wants to live, how to nurture the relationships that actually matter, and let go of the ones that are not going to grow with him. He makes this beautiful speech at the gala. He admits that he loves Ruby. This is the James episode. So following that train of thought, this episode, either in isolation or at least if you're taking everything you've seen before it and stopping right here, this feels like a turning point, right? We're all in agreement. It feels like the type of episode where you will have before 2.3 and after 2.3 when it comes to James Beaufort. Because if you ever have James dramatically backslide from this, I'm so sorry, you will have to throw the whole man away. You have to. We've got the latter half of this season, and then only one more season after that. Presumably that would also be 6 episodes. You started off season 2 with the most dire, egregious violation of James kissing another girl when he's intoxicated and at a low point, and now this episode has happened. So, if you haven't backslide just to conjure up drama to fill an episode, that's character assassination. Mortimer Beaufort is a supervillain. You don't need James's misbehavior impeding the love story between him and Ruby any longer. Henceforth, you just need to take down Mortimer. That's all. I'm definitely in the wrong genre here, because if this were me writing this, I know how he would be handled. Have any of you seen Freaky Tales? The bracelet that Lucid gave to Tina? That. Double tap.
Homicide.
And speaking of drama for the sake of drama, was anyone else irked by the whole, well, let's have everything go wrong with the gala so Ruby has to fix it last minute? What was the point of that? What was the point? You can't claim that it's an excuse to put Ruby and James in the same place. They're already around each other. They go to the same school. He's been helping with the gala preparations. They've been having plenty of scenes with one another. He's already been motivated to try to do better and win her back. Be worthy of her love. If you wanted them to stand near a picturesque prop, you could have just done that at the gala. I was so annoyed because they are just stressing Ruby out extra for the sake of it. More often than not, as I've said before, Maxton Hall strikes a good balance of not over-dramatizing the plot. A lot of the heightened elements come from the class inequality and Mortimer being a villain. That's probably the only noteworthy point of criticism I had about these first 3 episodes. The accidental gala sabotage was excessive, but everything else worked well in my estimations. One final bit of feedback I will share is something that I had intended to share in my earlier reviews of season 2 that I've already published here on my channel, but I kept getting distracted because of how many videos I'm simultaneously prepping for these upcoming weeks, in addition to everything else I was already working on before that. Circling back to Maxton Hall season 1, the dance scene immaculate, truly, 10s across the board. But I really wanted to specifically compliment the song choice. Now, I am not an expert on The Weeknd and his discography, but whenever a song of his is put within my frame of reference, I feel like I usually end up rating it favorably. That song and how well it suits the scene, fabulous. The song he did for James Cameron's Avatar: The Way of Water, absolutely. Him donating millions of dollars to GAZA. A lot more celebrities should be doing that. Moth to a Flame. A very on-the-nose title, but it suits the scene. I love to watch a couple in a love story grow closer and or reconcile by dancing together. It's peak romance, it's so classic, and more modern storytellers would do well to remember that. I was originally going to make this a separate video, but then I decided that I didn't want to double post 2 Maxton Hall videos back to back within, I don't know, a couple of hours, so I'm just going to put this in at the end of my spoiler review for episodes 1 through 3. I'm recording this on a different day, obviously, but now I'm going to be talking a bit about episodes 4 through 6 of Maxton Hall Season 2. The review embargo lifted for those episodes to synchronize with the premiere of Season 2, but nothing too major as far as plot spoilers go are going to be shared here. With these earlier reviews I'm sharing of episodes before they air, I'm really not aiming to say that much about what's in them. There are usually a couple of do not reveals for each episode, which are things that you're not allowed to say before that episode is released to the masses, but still, I don't think it would be as much fun if I were to give everything away beforehand, so I mostly aim to just share a bit of broad feedback and preview what's to come and some of my opinions about that story within these various episodes, and also the broader season or season-long storylines and character arcs. In revisiting the second half of Season 2 to prep an early review, I was thinking about how many years ago I used to watch a show, which I will not name on here because it's a propaganda show that at this point I really don't want to promote because gross.
I'm glad we're not watching a cop show. Gotta stop mythologizing the police, for Christ's sake, come on.
This was a show that took on a structure where each episode would start off high because the previous episode had ended on a cliffhanger, and then you would descend into your resting rate, and then things would ramp back up again so that you would work your way up towards ending that episode on a cliffhanger. In a sense, I think episode 4 feels like that resting rate of this season. It's the calm before the storm. You've had these really dramatic episodes in the first half of this season that are carrying on with various dramatic things that were established in Season 1 and its season finale in particular, where you had this major loss of the Beaufort matriarch. So you have a lot of drama to work your way through in the 3-episode premiere of Season 2, and episode 4 is when you're able to just have things settle down ever so slightly, give you a moment to breathe, and also set up the inevitable escalating drama that will ramp up in the last 2 episodes of this season, and presumably set up the final dramatic conflicts in whatever the primary narrative will be in Season 3, which has already been said to be the final season of Maxton Hall. I'm glad Season 3 is the end because the show is called Maxton Hall, which is the name of the school they're attending. So once this school year is over and they've graduated, these people are going off to the next stages of their lives. Just have this contained story and this series while it's still good quality, and don't drag it on for so long that you tank your ending and then you lose your fan base and then they never want to come back and revisit the series again. The fact that that's applicable to more than one show proves that that's an indication that more folks in the corporate offices need to consider when they're greenlighting more seasons of series that don't necessarily need more seasons. Given the end of Season 2, Episode 3, there is an unnecessarily big fallout from that when it comes to Mortimer's reaction, but we already know how terrible Mortimer is at regulating his emotions. Grown, middle-aged man, probably has a sore back and high blood pressure, but does he learn how to respond to things that he doesn't like at a reasonable level? No. But apart from that, this isn't really a Mortimer on a tirade sort of episode because, like I said before, this is more so the calm before the storm. So the only real villainy to be found in this episode comes from outside of the Beaufort family. You already know the characters in this ensemble, so you can probably guess who else is in this show that could offer up a bit of villainy for the week. Episode 4 ends with some escalating tension that directly leads into Episode 5. You more or less know what the end of Episode 4 will lead to. Maybe the exact route isn't what you think it will be, but the final destination remains the same. By this point, episode 5, James and Ruby are back together, so you know that in the world of Maxton Hall, that means it's time for the drama to start flaring up again. The sources of that drama? Well, you can probably guess, and you'd probably be correct. We can start with some broad positive feedback about this episode first. This is the episode where we get to see the full Midsummer Night's Dream aesthetic on display. Full compliments, we're paying those to the people who are doing the costumes, filming, color grading. Everything is so pretty to look at. It's very picturesque. It's infused with warmth. The social media editors will have an absolute field day with this one because there's just so much to work with. Who's your favorite character? Well, if they're outside during this Midsummer Night's Dream bit, you're going to be putting that character in the edit, front and center. Now, I'm not going to do an entire debrief on the plot of Midsummer Night's Dream, but go give that a read if you've not already done so. Broadly speaking, we do get a sort of literary narrative parallel of the story of Midsummer Night's Dream and certain events of episode 5, particularly when they're outside and showcasing the aesthetics of the play. But it's Maxton Hall, so you're going to be leading the audience towards the most intense escalations that will ramp up as you are approaching the end of season 2. It's not just going to be some fun, lighthearted, whimsical misunderstandings. I think the more that I reflect on the material of Maxton Hall Season 2, it sort of reaffirmed my preference for films, because when you're telling a story in the television medium, you really have to stretch certain things out for long enough to fill the episodes and multiple seasons, whereas in a film, more often than not, you need to wrap everything up just in time for the end credits to roll. You're finished. There are things that are done in episode 4 and I go, yes, that's good. And then almost immediately the characters backtrack on what they just said, specifically because the story needs the drama that will unfold because of the consequences of going back on the thing that they just said. I can never quite tell if I'm merely projecting my own knowledge of the season in its entirety in my judgments of certain characters, but I can't help but feel as though some of the drama in episode 5 gets a bit aggravating to watch or rewatch because of how obvious I think it should be to the characters themselves that of course, that's how things were going to go based on the decisions they made. Not only that, the handful of characters that I dislike because of their villainous actions and the roles that they play in being nefarious towards the heroes, for lack of a better term, in this narrative, they're all up to no good in episode 5. On the one hand, if I look through a more analytical lens, I can make note of the ways that the actors playing those villainous characters are doing good work, and they really understand the characters they're playing and how to empathize with those perspectives so that they can play them as human beings and not just cartoon villains. But on the other hand, I can feel my patience wearing thin by this episode because it really feels like these characters do nothing but be insufferable. I don't empathize with their perspectives, and it's honestly not my responsibility to do so. And I shudder to think about how, presumably, in season 3, all of those people are still going to be around and doing things that will aggravate me. Things that I've watched them do for the entire season, or 2 straight seasons. And finally, I'm going to avoid saying much about episode 6, but what I will say is that the dramatic bad things that happen here, nothing really felt like a surprise. Everything has been set up all the way to the season 2 finale, where if you're watching and rewatching the episodes that come beforehand, like if you're preparing multiple reviews of the show for our YouTube channel, you can fully track what's happening and what certain storylines have told you or shown you is going to happen. I don't know how I fully feel about the season 2 finale, and I don't think I should fully explain why, even cryptically, because I feel as though I've made so many of my opinions very clear about specific characters that if I were to try to talk around certain storylines, you would still be able to figure out which characters I was talking about. So all I will say about the season finale is that we can unpack the messy, dramatic details at the end of season 2 in a couple of weeks from now when we can talk about all of those spoilers. It's very dramatic, a lot of emotions, but do you expect anything less? It's Maxton Hall.